Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to the Football Diary podcast. What a weekend of results for teams that you didn't expect to win, who actually won really comfortably. Bournemouth winning away at Newcastle 4-1 is the standout result of the weekend, isn't it? And also Everton under David Moyes winning 3-2 against another sorry Tottenham performance too. That's how we're going to lead this weekend's podcast. Obviously, we've got to talk about Villa too and their comeback against Arsenal. And Nottingham Forest, we always have a slot for them. They beat Southampton 3-2 to continue their impressive season so far. We'll be zooming in on Elliot Anderson and what impact he's having in their midfield, as well as many other stellar players, of course, for Forest so far. But let's start at St James's Park, guys. Newcastle 1, Bournemouth 4. A game characterised, I think, Myles, by Justin Kluivert hat-trick, it's fair to say, but a great team performance, first of all.
You can really see the development of this Bournemouth side now, can't you, and how much they've grown. I think you've played Newcastle at a time when they seem on the ascendancy, and there was conversations going into this week of whether they could make a late push even for top two, and Bournemouth just took the game to them. Even at St James's Park, they were really prepared to be intense, to attack them, and yeah, having someone like Kluivert in the form that he's in right now, it's really paid off for them.
It's just a result that stunned me, David. I don't know about you, because Newcastle away is a really difficult game for most teams, but Bournemouth just went at it from minute one, didn't they? And you could see that Newcastle struggled to deal with that attacking impetus.
I think, in a way, it's probably a surprise for some, not for me. I've seen Bournemouth go away to teams this season and do it like United absolutely tore them to shreds in the transition and on the break. But I think it was very different this game. I think they dominated particular periods of the game where you probably expected Newcastle to have a little bit more of a sustained period of pressure, and it just never really happened for Newcastle. And that's quite strange considering this run of form they've been having. But Bournemouth, they're just relentless in everything they did, and I just think particularly the last couple of games, in the absence of Evan Nilsson, I think Uatara, I think he's a player that, for me, I think he just sums that team up down to the ground. I think he's probably not a player I'd highlight for his ability, but I think his sort of versatility and the job that he's looking to do for the team in that forward position. I thought he took his goal, really well. Obviously, the one disallowed as well, but I just thought that his sort of work rate they put into the game and the amount of energy that team puts in, particularly in the final third, off the ball, but just obviously looking to kind of transition so quickly. I think it's just they're such a great team and a great advert for the league. And you look at them now, the position they're in, like for European football. And we did say a couple of weeks ago, they've been going under the radar. I think with some of the performances, they're fully in the picture for European football now.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're probably one of the most informed, strong contenders. It's that 10 games in a row unbeaten in all competitions now. They've just ended Newcastle's unbeaten 9 run as well. So yeah, 2 informed teams, which is why this result seems a little bit more of a surprise. But Justin Kluivert, Myles, like a hat-trick, means he's now scored 2 more goals than his dad at St James's Park, who obviously played for Newcastle as well, Patrick Kluivert. He's a player that's really adapted to life in the Premier League so well. And I think there's a point where a lot of neutral fans, especially English football fans who knew his name, obviously, through his dad, had only just seen him kind of go down the career ladder a little bit, but then he ended up at Roma, rejuvenated his career a little bit. Are you surprised to see him producing the kind of goal-scoring form is showing now?
Yeah, it's been excellent to see how he's adapted, obviously. It's someone that we kind of recognise as a winger in his early career days, and now he can still fulfil that role. And Iraola's got him in a more central position as well, and he looks really threatening. It's a player that we kind of always thought was going to go on to big things. You remember his days at Ajax when United faced them. I think it was in the Europa League, wasn't it, under Mourinho? Mourinho's talking to him on the pitch after the game saying, stay here one more year and I'm coming for you. I'll bring you to Man United. You are the next big thing. And then he makes that move to Roma and it just never really works out for him. And he has those loan spells where he go. I think he went to Leipzig and then Nice. And the Premier League didn't necessarily seem like the obvious destination for him because he looked like quite a lightweight winger who was never really one to post big goal-scoring numbers. And you think, that's quite a risky move. It's paid off massively because he's matured a lot. He's got a confidence about him. I mean, he's a penalty taker, which I think says a lot, doesn't it, for a player like that? You can see that he looks like he's willing to step his game up a bit further. I mean, he's now matched his highest ever goal scoring season, which was his second season at Ajax that got him that big money move to Roma. He's already got 10 goals this season, so he'll probably break that as well. It's an excellent player to have in your team. And like Dave says, with the injuries to both Unal and Evan Ilson, they're looking for goals from somewhere, and he's stepping up and providing them. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think the goals in this game, 4 was a real surprise, but the quality of the goals from Kluivert and from Kerkez as well. Milos Kerkez's goal in the 95th minute or something was deserved as well, because he's been so fantastic for them too. And I think all these players at the moment have got so much confidence. They've got a team that isn't short on borderline arrogance, really. And it's just good to see. And I think Iraiola's really playing on that, isn't he, to an extent. But for Newcastle, Dave, I think they're a team we expected more from this game, but were completely sucker punched by Bournemouth's approach. But a few players that, again, were bang on form for them going into this game, like Isak, for example, on his goal scoring run, kept really, really quiet. What didn't work for Newcastle, do you think?
I think they definitely lack those relationships, particularly between that front three and the midfield and the attack. Just wasn't there, just wasn't happening for them. I've never seen Isak this season become nullified like it was in this game. Just really kept quiet, to be honest. They didn't get in those areas where they're able to punish teams. Bournemouth just didn't really let them settle at any point. I think the goal was a little bit out of the blue as well. Guimaraes, I think, is obviously from the corner. After that, it was Bournemouth were well back on the front foot, and they only ever really looked like one team was going to go on and win it, if we're being honest. And that's quite surprising to say.
Yeah, I mean, that cluster of teams now, Man City, Newcastle, obviously Bournemouth included in that, Villa included in that, Chelsea. It's so interesting to see how top 4 plays out, isn't it? And it could be top 5, couldn't it, for Champions League? So it begs the question, doesn't it? Who do you fancy the most for this, Myles, for European football and Champions League football next season out of these two teams?
Well, there's now 5 points between 4th and 10th. Which is crazy. I think if you put it between these two teams, I would expect Newcastle to keep up what they showed in the last few games, because I think they've probably got a bit of work to do in January, and I think overall these players are kind of used to that level and they've been there and done it before. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Bournemouth claim a European place. But to do that, they are fighting off Villa, who did it last year, have Unai Emery, he knows what he's doing. They're fighting off Chelsea, who have such a deep squad as well. I think it's impressive that they're even in the conversation, really, because it's not that long ago that there was talk of whether Iraola maybe should have been moved on, and they did really well to hold on to him, let him implement his philosophy, back him in the transfer market to a degree as well, and also hold on to some key players. Like Kerkez is one that we kind of expect is going to move at some point soon. Like you wonder whether United will look at him, or Liverpool, or someone of that sort of ilk will offer him big money. And Bournemouth are doing really well to build this squad up. So they're not out of the conversation. I just can't see top 5. I think it's probably a bit of a stretch.
Well, two teams that are now close to each other in the table, which we didn't see coming at the start of the season. I think another combination of teams close to each other in the table at the minute we also didn't see coming was Everton and Spurs. Now just 4 points separates them, I think, but a place in the table. Who'd have seen that at all? Like, Spurs' decline is something that needs to be studied, I think, but Everton's resurgence in this game was really impressive. Obviously, David Moyes back at the club, at Goodison as well, where they've been so woeful this season, Dave. But to win 3-2 against Spurs and actually be 3-0 up at half-time was so impressive. I thought they set up so well and played to their own strengths, which hasn't been seen as much under Sean Dyche. The kind of way they defend quite deep under Dyche, and they do absorb a lot of pressure, but it puts so much pressure on that defence. But they actually went for Spurs because they're there for the taking, aren't they, Tottenham, really? It's the right approach, and it paid off in the end.
Yeah, I think one of our subs, I think it was Random P, who said, is it a flash in the pan from Everton, or whether it's probably the terrible form of Spurs that it's difficult to pick between the two, to be honest. But I thought there were some positive things from Everton in this game. Overall, you could see the players sense that I think Spurs were in a bit of a particular spot of bother at this present time, and you could see them being a lot more positive in the game. I thought Calvert-Lewin looked like a different player, but NDI, I thought the goal that he scored, it was real quality. and we've known he's had that quality. But I just think at times that it seems like the players have just struggled to express themselves in certain games. But it seems like Moyes has given them that little bit of confidence, a little bit more freedom to go on and kind of really exert themselves. And I don't know what you can say about this Tottenham side at the moment. But I mean, you called it, Myles, like before Christmas that Ange probably shouldn't be in the job. And can he be for much longer? Like
we'll get on to Spurs. Sure. I feel like we need the spotlight on Everton for a little bit. They deserve, I think, a bit of praise, don't they? And to be 2-0 up within half an hour, as you say, with Calvert-Lewin getting on the score sheet and finishing so well, and obviously forced an own goal to make it 3-2. But they were getting in those positions. And Ndiaye's goal, superb, really well taken. And I think that's the kind of approach that Moyes instilled into them, didn't he, Myles? This kind of go for it, like Tottenham are there, run at them, and they did frequently, had less of the ball, but in a kind of a way of playing that's becoming more popular this season, with Nottingham Forest pioneering it. It's basically take any pressure that's thrown at you and run. Everton did that really, really well. I haven't seen that from them in a long time. And this team is the same team as Sean Dyche had a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
But they're performing with football that we haven't seen yet. Why is that? What did Moyes do differently?
So Dave mentioned then it just looked like there was a lot more confidence in their entire lineup. And in the attacking areas in particular, Jesper Lindstrom I thought was brilliant. I thought he looked really, really good. I thought he put a good shift in. Iliman Ndiaye looks like he could be playing at a really, really high level. And then Calvert-Lewin, when was the last time we saw him control a football like that for his goal? The footwork to kind of beat the defenders and slot it home was excellent. And it does feel like there has been a bit of a shift in mentality. You've got someone who really knows the club, is a bit of a fan favourite there anyway. And I think sometimes David Moyes gets such a harsh reputation in England. I think the time at Sunderland really kind of tarnished his reputation a little bit. Obviously, Man United, I think he gets a bit of a pass on that because we know what a challenge that was going to be. The spell at Sociedad is a bit of a weird one. Think about what he did at West Ham, really, particularly the second time, obviously. Consistently challenging the top end of the table for European football, won a European trophy, something that we watched him do at Everton as well, like getting them into Europe and really fighting. He's come in and already you can see that the players feel like they've got a lot of faith in him, and that's huge. I mean, you could hear him barking Jesper Lindstrom's name on the touchline, going, go forward, pushing him forward. And that's really exciting. To see Everton have more attempts on goal than Tottenham in a game, who are relentless and just try and beat you by outscoring you rather than ever defending, I think says a lot about an Everton side under development of David Moyes right now.
Yeah, it's one of those classic contrasts of styles, wasn't it? Where obviously Moyes decided to change the way that they would been playing for the opposition, and it worked really well. Whereas Tottenham did the exact opposite and continued doing what they've been doing all season, and it just didn't work. The personnel they've got, it's a threadbare team at the minute, but Ange keeps persisting with the system, and they're getting caught out so often without the players they need. Their starting 11 is great, don't get me wrong. When Tottenham are at full strength, they would be flying. But can you persist playing this way when you've got so many key players missing, when there's no like for like, changes for them? How do you get around that? It's not working in the minute. Does he need to change? Does he need to bite the bullet, Myles, or is it too late for that?
Of course he does. And I think also he's got to start looking at what he has available to him elsewhere as well. Like, you can't tell me that Archie Gray and Ben Davies are better suited as centre-backs than anyone in their academy, even. Like, surely, if you haven't got anyone ready to step up to that level at centre-back in your youth ranks, then close the academy. What's the point in them? I mean, you saw Mikey Moore come on and have a massive impact.
Well.
So clearly they're developing talent. Why have they not identified that? And then they take Dragusin off at half time. All right, he's shocking, to be fair. He's been terrible since he signed for him, and he looked really poor in this game. But that's your only recognised centre-back, and you've taken him off for Richarlison. All right, you're chasing a game, but it could have been worse. If we're honest, if Everton had possessed a bit more quality in the final third, by the 60th minute mark, it could have been 4 or 5, and then the game's over. It's only when Kulusevski kind of claws them back into the game with a moment of magic, because that's what he himself is capable of, that Spurs even looked on for anything in this game, because they were so poor. And I feel like a broken record. I keep saying there's no way that this position is sustainable for Ange now, because yes, the injuries have really knocked him back. I mean, if you consider traditionally, defensively, they would have Vicario in goal, they'd have Ndoggy left back, they would have Romero and Van de Ven as their centre backs, and the only one that probably would keep his place is Pedro Porro, and they can't call on any of them bar Pedro Porro right now, yeah, obviously that's going to affect your team. But the physicality they lack across the pitch makes them so easy to play against.
Yeah, it
like
does.
their midfield looks weak, really. The forward line is off it, other than Kulusevski, really. Like, when was the last time we saw Son look so bereft of any confidence?
Yeah, and missing easy chances as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he should. And that's the time when you know that something needs a change. How often do you... I mean, Everton are a perfect example of it. We've just said their players look like they lacked confidence a couple of weeks ago. They've gone into this game knowing they could win something. I think maybe these Spurs players need a different voice now. And you know, really, they should sack Ange by this week. They should go this week. They won't, though. They'll wait till February, like we said. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's become so untenable now. Because they're 4 points behind Everton, ahead of Everton, sorry. But Everton have a game in hand as well. And we were talking about Everton just a couple of weeks ago as a team that we thought could get drawn into the relegation race. Like, this is crazy for Spurs. I said he should have been gone by Christmas. You have to act now while the window's open, surely.
I think what doesn't make it any easier as well, if you look at in that team, especially when the going gets tough, is you need leaders in there. And I mean, you've got your captain there, Son, who's not really that sort of leader who's going to kind of drag you through the toughest times. And you look at some of the players that brought in over the last few years. I mean, you've got to say there's been a lot of money that's probably been wasted if we're being honest. Obviously, Basuma came in for quite a sizable sum. Richarlison, they threw obviously WhatsApp, and it's just a case of, I think, the wrong profiles for at the time. I mean, you could probably even throw Solanke in there as well. There's a lot of money for a player who, that sort of amount of money, you're thinking that's going to be somebody's going to come in and finish that jigsaw puzzle for us. But there's so many pieces left to fill that it's
I don't even think it's pieces left to fill. I think even signing, they've got Kinski in this window, and he did brilliantly, to be fair. He kept them in the game, and they did attempt to come back to their credit, and they could have made it happen because Everton looked a bit nervous at the end, didn't they? So to bring it back to 3-2 did flatter them slightly because Everton should have been more clinical, but at least the fight was there. And the thing that really irks me about Ange Postecoglou is his post-match interviews are always so negative. Like they talk to him in the press, and I think the BBC led him with a question about familiar feel to this result then, and Ange was like, what do you mean a familiar feel? And he had to explain, well, it's because it's another defeat. It took it really personally, and it's getting a bit personal now. And I feel like that must transmit to the team as well. So yeah, God knows what the Tottenham spirit's like in the dressing room, but it feels very negative, doesn't it?
Why is he asking that question? They've lost 12 games out of 22. So, of course, it's a familiar feeling. He should know that. It feels like it's really easy for him to deflect these things now. If I was a Spurs fan, all the goodwill that he built up by being really lively, being really charismatic, that amazing run he went on at the start of last season, oh man, I'd be tired of that by now. Because actually, if you look at Spurs, they started last season incredibly well, finished it really poorly, and have started this season really poorly. So when was the last time Spurs were good?
Yeah, it's been a stretch.
Even with the 1-0 lead, you can't see them overcoming Liverpool in the semi-final. And I wonder if that's the only thing that's keeping Ange in a job right now, the fact that they've got that semi-final, because they made that mistake before when they sacked Mourinho just before the final. So I wonder if they are just trying to see, can we at least give him that one? Because they might fancy themselves on the day to beat Newcastle or turn up in a derby, whereas really Liverpool could come over and steamroll them here in the next leg. Let's
look at Arsenal's title challenge, shall we? Has it gone off the rails, do you think, Myles? 2-2 against Aston Villa. Obviously, a game you had a close eye on. They took the lead into a 2-goal lead as well, but Villa, to their immense credit, pulled them back really well. Is this a game Arsenal should have won?
It definitely is on the face of things, particularly when you get the 2-0 lead. I mean, it can't go ignored that they've got their own defensive injury issues. Obviously, there's still no Ben White, still no Calafiori, and then Saliba's out of this game as well. That's huge for them. They're playing Thomas Partey as like a auxiliary right back who, in the first half, looked fine because Villa were offering nothing down the left. And then as soon as Luka Dean came on, it showed the fragility of Arsenal defensively, and they were able to put balls into the box and they were able to create things, and they didn't know how to deal with it. It was a really interesting one. And I feel like in the last couple of weeks, you've seen the mentality of this Arsenal team just completely drop. The reliance on Saka is so clear, and the debate has to go on of, as grateful as you can be to Arteta for building something quite impressive. 5 years, 1 FA Cup, spent 700 million, and still they're going to come short of the title again. And can you continue to be the bridesmaid? Because there's always been an air of acceptance over Arsenal not winning the league when Man City are so incredible and looking like they could go unbeaten for 4 seasons almost, or winning the treble and just putting points totals up that are unmatchable. Well, there's no City this year. And okay, Liverpool have been fantastic, but this was the year, really. Yeah. You've gone out and bought a couple more players that you wanted. Not a great deal in the summer, but Calafiori was a good addition. You've gone out and got another wing option in Sterling, and you've not really utilised that. And how many of those Arsenal players have improved this year? Gabriel has. Lewis Skelly looks good. He looks really, really good. Timber's done well.
Breyer's kept them in it a lot, to be fair.
Going forward, though, Odegaard's got no non-penalty goals this season and 2 assists. That's a frightening thing. He looks scared to shoot all of a sudden. Yeah, and you wonder where that attacking impetus is going to come from in this Arsenal team. It seems such a dated thing to say of like, they need a striker. Well, why are they not going and getting them? You see this week they've agreed a deal for Zubimendi. And you think, go and get a forward. I think I saw the other day, they've spent, like I said, they spent 700 million. I think in that time they brought 4 forwards in, and that includes Sterling on loan and Marquinhos, the Brazilian winger. Like, they're not doing much in the market to actually improve a really obvious area. All right, they got 2 goals in this game, but defensively Villa were quite weak as well, and they can't see a game out because their heads just drop, it feels like.
Yeah, Arsenal are a weird enigma, aren't they, Dave? Because like Myles was saying, like they should have addressed that issue in the window. And I look back at our season preview, go check it out if you haven't seen it already, to see how accurate we are so far. But we all said Arsenal should be winning the title. We predicted them to win it. But we all had that caveat of they just need to strengthen up front. I think we all assumed midway through the transfer window in the summer that they probably would, and they never did. And I don't know if they're just scared to shell out the kind of money they need for a top-class quality finisher. But then they've dropped so much money on some players in the past, and they're looking to spend, another 50, 60 million on Zubimendi as well, when really they could leave that position till the summer if they wanted to. Why are they not investing in this attacking position, Dave? Is it a philosophy thing? What the hell is Arteta doing?
This is a strange one, isn't it? Because I've seen them fans, venting their opinions on bringing in Zubimendi, and not obviously very reluctant to spend the money on a forward, or whether the forward that they're targeting isn't available right here, right now. And there's been a lot of talk around Alexander Isak, hasn't there, and them being interested in him. And it's strange to me because obviously they brought Mikel Merino in as well, who's a similar sort of profile to Zubimendi.
Been poor.
It just makes you wonder about this recruitment team at Arsenal, because there's a lot of players that have come in and the jury's still out on them. I mean, we've spoken, to death on Kai Havertz, haven't we, over the last 18 months even. Such a huge amount of money spent on him, and whether he's really what they needed at the time. I can see him getting a lot of stick on social media, which is obviously not nice to see, but it's probably, there's an argument there to say that he's probably not the right player to be in this team. He's obviously not scoring enough goals. He's not scoring enough goals, not taking the opportunities. You look at the FA Cup game against United, missed some great, gilt-edged chances in that game. They need players who can decide moments in games when they're really up against it, and particularly in this game. I think when you're lacking that kind of creativity, and we were talking about, what such a plus it was, Odegaard coming back into the team. Like Myles said, he's even gone off the boil over the last few weeks, and they really are struggling and looking for just players to stand and be counted, and it's just not happening for them at the minute. And when you're 9 points behind now in a title race, six, but with a game in hand, obviously Liverpool a game in hand, haven't they? Effectively, it's probably going to be 9 because the way Liverpool are playing at the minute, it looks like nothing's going to stop them. It's tough times, and you've got to say you look at Arteta and the way obviously he speaks in interviews. He looks like a man who feels like he's under pressure.
Yeah, he does. You're right. It's usually kind of immensely positive about his team, but he doesn't seem that way at the minute, which is weird because they're still very much in it. And that's the frustrating thing for neutrals is you want to see a title race. Feels like it's Nottingham Forest at the minute, the only ones looking to challenge that. So are Arsenal still in it? Who knows? They just need to address this weird stuttering form they've got at the minute. But let's talk about Villa, I think, first.
Before we do that, quick question to you both.
Go on.
Is there a world where in the summer you see Xabi Alonso take over at Real Madrid and Carlo Ancelotti becomes available? Arsenal think that's a winner. Arteta's done a good job at laying the foundation. We now go and get someone who is a winner to get us over the line. Does that make sense?
It's more the case whether Ancelotti would go to Arsenal.
Oh, surely he would.
His stock's quite high still, but Real Madrid
Arsenal were a huge club with a lot of money, a lot of history, and are expecting trophies. I think he could go and do that.
I suppose it's where he trusts the project as well. I mean,
you got to surely because it's been a good project. It's just not quite there. He could go and take all the credit. I think it makes loads of sense.
Interesting theory. Let's talk about Villa. Come on.
Go on.
Arsenal bore me to death, if I'm honest. I really hate talking about Arsenal. But Villa, on the other hand, I do enjoy talking about. And this was a comeback that was necessary. And, you know, whether they should have gone 2-0 down, we can speculate, really. And you can probably tell me your take on why they went 2-0 down. But to come back and make it 2-2 against a team that are considered potential champions at the start of the season. And Luca Dean and Matty Cash, I don't know what they're doing this season, but the balls they're pinging in from wide really helped, didn't they?
Yeah, I think it's a shame because Maatsen had a couple of really good appearances for Villa, got a start in this game, and then really struggled. So they had to go back to Luca Dean. Again, I keep saying it, don't I?
Quality.
Villa seem desperate to replace Luca Dean, and they just can't because he's so good. Yeah, he made a massive difference. That left-hand side, it showed his maturity and his experience because in the first half, I've said before, we don't really play with a left winger. Ramsey's come back in and he kind of drifts to the left-hand side, but he also likes to come into central roles, letting the left fullback go forward a lot, which seems to make sense for Maatsen. But because Martinelli was playing so high on that right, Maatsen seemed really nervous to go forward, and that meant Partey could come into the middle and we were getting overloaded there. Martinelli was pushing our defence back and Maatsen was really struggling against him, and we weren't seeing any attacking threat coming down that left wing. Whereas when Luca Dean came on, he seems to manage both, and he seems to know Martinelli won't risk going that high if I do the same thing. And he's so positive with that, and his delivery, it's pinpoint every time. He's fantastic. And for that to be our route back into the game was huge. It was a great moment for the Tielemans as well. Yeah. He's been so fantastic this season, but to get a goal is huge. And then again, anyone that ever doubts Ollie Watkins, you don't know football because he's such an incredibly good forward. The kind of person that if Arsenal had gone and got at a time when he would have been more available, they'd win the league this year. I think it's that simple.
Definitely.
He's a superb forward. I keep seeing people go, oh, well, no player in the Premier League has missed more big chances than Ollie Watkins this season. What you miss from that stat is the players second and third are Haaland and Salah. What that tells me is actually we're talking about players that are getting themselves these chances really often. He's posted double figures again. It's the fifth year in a row. He's got 10 Premier League goals. He's outstanding. His finish was so good for this, and he really needed that. He peeled away from Thomas Partey incredibly well, fanned the space, and that's what Watkins is really good at. He said in his post-match he wants a world where him and Duran can play together. And we've tried Watkins out on the left before, and it's not ever really quite worked. I don't really know how you fit them both down the middle, like who drops out of the midfield. But our squad is looking thin at the moment, particularly in the midfield area. We had to bring Bogard on in central midfield in this game. Yeah. So you do wonder whether now is the time to maybe look at tweaking the shape.
Well, I just think the fact that Villa have pulled it back is a great testament to them, and the way they're performing still in a season where they're meant to be having a bit of an off season, really. They're doing well considering. I think even the likes of Watkins, people talking of his drop-off. If this is a drop-off, that's impressive. It shows the levels he's been at. But I'll let you have the last word on Villa, Dave. What about the final kind of moment, really? Should Arsenal have won it? Should it have been a winning goal? The deflection? Should it have counted?
I've seen a load of rubbish on social media about Arsenal fans complaining about it, saying it came off his stomach. If it bounces out like that, that's not come off his stomach. There's no way that's physically possible. Villa could have arguably have won it. Obviously, Tillemans had that shot and just it came off the outside of the post. I thought they showed some really positive things, particularly in the second half. It was really fascinating actually to hear Ollie Watkins in post match mention about, and they asked him about the finish, and he just said obviously he feels as though his finishing is better when he's acting in the moment and doesn't have too much time to think about. And you can see that actually, I think, at times in games. I think some of the chances he has missed is when he's through and he's had a bit too much time to probably think about what he's going to do. And I think in the moment, like Myles says, he gets himself into so many positions where he's able to act on those opportunities and score goals for them. And I just think that was a great point for Villa.
Huge point, yeah.
Just quickly worth mentioning, that goal, the Havertz handball, if you watch the angle from behind the goal, you clearly see it hits his hand. The other one, I can see why people will go, oh, does it hit his arm? Does it hit something? Well, just look at the other angle. It's really blatant. Like, there's no debate about it. You can really clearly see it. And Villa are back in the market again as well. It looks like they're getting rid of Diego Carlos. He's going to Fenerbahce. And they're bringing in, I'm going to say it's pronounced Loic Bidet.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's an accent there.
He spent some time at Forest, didn't he?
Yeah.
And has looked excellent at Sevilla. Monchi obviously really rates him. He was the one that took him to Sevilla. I think he had a loan spell there when they won the Europa League, and he stayed. 24 years old, super strong, looks quite calm on the ball as well. And it's nice to see Villa are addressing a key area. But it's weird to me that they're doing it whilst selling a centre-back. Because at the moment, it's Konsa, Mings, and Bogard are probably the only ones. And he's now also playing as a defensive midfielder because Anana went off injured. We had no Barkley. The squad is looking very thin just as the Champions League's about to start again as well. Like, obviously, we've got Monaco next. Yeah. So they've got to move quickly in the market. We've got Daniel Marlin in, which I think is a great signing for the money.
Good strength, yeah.
It's a weird time to sign him. He's had a terrible season. If you look at his Bundesliga numbers this year, it's awful. But it fits Emery's recruitment model and Villa's recruitment model of bringing these young players in who really clearly have a much higher ceiling than they're currently reaching, and their value will only go up. I think we paid just over 20 million for Marlon.
Bargain. Absolute bargain.
If he bangs a few goals in the Premier League, all of a sudden he's worth a lot more.
A quick one, just to address you mentioned about him tinkering with Digne and Maatsen.
Yeah.
Is there not a case there for him to try Maatsen ahead of Digne?
I've said that. I would love to see him play that left wing role because I think they could play really well together. The only problem I think you'd find is he will occupy a lot of the spaces that Luca Dean likes to get into when he moves forward. And I think that could be quite difficult. You've seen it a couple of times off the bench happen. Yeah. And Matty Cash has played as a right winger before while Konsa plays right back. So he's not opposed to having a more defensive player in that sort of role. I would love to see it, but I think more likely now Ramsey is fit, that's sort of his space, and when McGinn is back, you imagine he kind of fits one of the attacking roles as well. So there's good options there. I don't know what our strongest 11 is right now, and I'm not sure Emery does either. No. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. It's because there's a lot of players performing better than I think we thought they would. Like Duran, I think a lot of us assumed he was gone in the summer and now is unsellable, and the midfield depth has really shone. So yeah, it's interesting. It's really exciting.
Well, Arsenal clearly can't push for a title charge right now, but can Nottingham Forest is the question. I mean, they failed to beat Liverpool, which was really frustrating in midweek, in a huge game, wasn't it? And they did really well to start so well in that game and go 1-0 up against them with a great counter-attacking goal, which has become their kind of hallmark. You could forgive them for being a bit deflated going into this game against Southampton. But Southampton, first of all, were woeful. They were absolutely terrible in that first half. And Forest won 3-2, I think flattered Southampton to a degree. But to see Forest still flying and level on points with Arsenal, Myles, is super impressive. And they just keep on surprising people. Is it a surprise anymore, though? I think this is their level now. At least kind of maybe top 4, top 5 seems like more than realistic.
Yeah, that seems in the bag now, doesn't it? I think the best thing about this result is even when it started looking a little bit more rocky, they did hold firm. You get teams like Forest who surprise a few and start competing at the top. You wait for a wobble almost, which is really unfair because there's nothing to base that on other than, it just doesn't seem right to see them where they are right now. So games like this, when they take that commanded lead and you see Southampton get themselves back into it, neutral fans probably expect them to throw it all the way. And actually, they managed to cling on, not even cling on. Defensively, we know how strong Forest are, and they rode that out, and I think that's encouraging. Plus, they're still spreading the goals out. Like Chris Wood popped up with one, of course, and you expect him to at the moment. I think he's just matched his best ever Premier League goal scoring season, and we've still got a long way to go. But Elliot Anderson gets a goal in this one, and he looks fantastic, doesn't he? And you can see that Forest have really nurtured some talent there.
I think for a team that relies on a quick counter and a transition from defence to attack, I think Anderson's that perfect link player, isn't he, Dave, in some ways? And Newcastle must be looking at him and thinking, we could really do with him for some depth right now. Even though their midfield is doing great, Anderson is proving to everybody what we knew all along, and he was a great signing. And we said that in the summer, didn't we? But the way he adapts to this Forest system and kind of gets the best out of what Nuno wants to achieve is really showing at the minute, this game especially.
Yeah, he's proven to be a key player, and I think you mentioned obviously Newcastle not having a great weekend. I think two of their former players, in Jakob Minte and Elliot Anderson, both scoring on the same weekend will just add salt to the wounds as well, doesn't it? But he's a great all-round player, and I know there were probably a few sort of questions in the summer over the sum of money that was brought in and whether he was truly worth that money, but the investment you can see was worth making. Like, there's so much real potential there for him to be so much more than even what he is now. And to see that some of the understandings that he's built with some of those players around him, particularly in attack, he's got a great relationship with them. You can see that. And you can see that Nuno's improving every single player in that side. I mean, we've spoken about their defence and how that's come on leaps and bounds this season. But there's a case for every single player in there to be probably up for the player of the year at the end of the season. Possibly. Just how well they've been. There's so many contenders in there, and I think that's the truly are the surprise package this season, along with Bournemouth. I think you've got to look at those two teams and just say that they are really a blueprint for what a Premier League team wants to be, coming from real difficult times and completely turning it around.
Yeah, I think another player that you mentioned was probably kind of contender for sort of team of the season so far. Obviously, Matt Sells we know has been great, but Ola Aina as well has been quality, and his ball for Chris Wood's goal was sensational. Is he probably at the minute, Myles, one of the best sort of fullbacks in the league right now?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a couple of them that have performed to a level that beyond what we expected, like we talked before about Anthony Robinson at Fulham, Kirkes at Bournemouth, but Ola Aina, the fact he's versatile as well, could play either side. I mean, I talked to the Red Side of the Trent podcast, and they were saying that they were confident he was the best fullback in the league and that they would hold on to him and he would continue to develop. And I can see it, really. He's such a good player. He offers a lot of stability at the back now. He looks a lot stronger defensively than we maybe recognised him from his earlier career, and still capable of going forward with that excellent output and a really likeable character. He seems to almost be the face of this Forest team a little bit, particularly the media, and too right. He's brilliant. Do
you know what? They've got a few characters, and I think that's what Nuno does. He builds teams with characters, and you see like Hudson-Odoi and you see Gibbs-White as well. They're all kind of in that bracket, really. It's a good vibe at Forest at the minute. And the atmosphere, I have to say, at the City Ground for the Liverpool game was absolutely incredible. And when Wood scored to take the lead against Liverpool, you could kind of feel this sense of something good happening, something special. I really do hope they go on to kind of maintain that position and challenge Liverpool. I'd love to see that.
I think the way you introduced this section, Mike, the way you worded it, and you said Forest failed to beat Liverpool, I think that says it all. Like that, the expectations that we have
disappointing
for this team now, because there's so much enthusiasm around the club, and fans are, this is as high as they've been for a long while. I just think that there's real belief there that it can go on and do something great.
For me personally, I'm really rooting for Forest at the moment, but there's one thing that's going to stop that soon, I think, because there's massive talk that they're in for Douglas Luiz to strengthen that midfield. And if they get him, to me, they've got top four. I think that cements it, because they've already got an excellent side. To add someone of that quality is fantastic. But I will be gutted to see him in another Premier League team. I will be so gutted.
Do you know what? The balance of that team is so good. I think the only thing they are missing is strength in depth, isn't it? And they have got some good players off the bench. I think you saw that when the midfield had to rotate around sort of Danilo and Sangare's injuries. It's been a real surprise to see them adapt so well to that. But to see someone like Luiz, that is next level, isn't it? That'd be amazing.
I'd be heartbroken. I mean, their bench today was what? Alex Marino, that Morato, Willy Bolly, Ward-Prowse, Yates, Awonyi, Jota
Quality.
Silva, Ramon Sosa. That's pretty good, to be fair. They quietly built a very good squad there. I say quietly, we all kind of knew how much they were going into the market a while ago. But it's turned into a really good squad. But yeah, getting someone like Louise in, if they manage to pull that one off, I'll be good.
Well, it'd be a strong signal, wouldn't it? That'd be for sure. They've spent some money on some transfers in the past, but I think now they're in a position to kind of consolidate the progress they've made, and some real statement signings would definitely do that. Let's watch this space, shall we? We're all Forest right now, surely, aren't we?
I don't know if I got that far yet. Still another Midlands club.
In the title race, I think I've never been more Forest. Yeah, that'd be amazing. That'd be incredible. Allow myself to get a little bit carried away, but yeah, that Liverpool draw rather. It felt like a bit of a defeat for Forest, and that's quite telling, isn't it? Really. We'll wrap up quickly, guys, with the best of the rest, and I just want to zoom in on one game in particular, and that is Liverpool. We have to talk about them. Really, still flying at the top, still winning and grabbing points when it looks unlikely sometimes, and they were going deep into the 90th minute against Brentford, and a very good Brentford team. It was a great game, to be fair, considering it was 0-0 up to that point. But Darwin Núñez comes off the bench. Again, another substitution that paid off for Arne Slot, Dave. Núñez scores twice. I mean, Liverpool have made us tough stuff, aren't they? This proves, if nothing else.
Yeah, and a player that's taken a lot of criticism over the last couple of weeks. I think he came on against United and got absolutely slaughtered for his performance when he got subbed on that game, and it's a player that you kind of sympathise a little bit with at times, especially with the money that it came in on. But you mentioned all that squad, they're making full use of it, aren't they? Some of the substitutions that Arne Slot has made this season is obviously ended up with them getting 3 points. It's no coincidence it's happened again.
Yeah, well, against Forest, was it Tsimikas and Luis Diaz that came off the bench to combine. So yeah, they're proving they can rotate when necessary. And I mean, can you see a Liverpool wobble? I think that's the only thing that's going to make a title race happen, Myles, isn't it? Is there any sign of that happening? I mean, I guess them drawing against Forest is a wobble in some ways, isn't it? But even then, they look good.
The only thing that you might wonder is if they keep going deeper in the Champions League, which you expect them to. They're competing on a lot of fronts. Could that distract them? But I doubt it. I think it's theirs, I'll be honest. We've been talking about Arsenal being out of the title race. As much as we all appreciate Forest, that would be a miracle, really. It's theirs to lose really firmly now.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a case of those below them having a wobble. It seems to be that the teams below them are just dropping points here and there. I mean, a lot of people still mentioning Man City a couple of weeks ago, and then they go and draw against Brentford, obviously drop points from 2-0 up. You just don't know what to expect in this league, and I think particularly some of the teams that you look at in that top 8, I think it actually gives you a kind of an idea of how the season has been, particularly some of the teams that you'd normally expect to be a little bit more consistent, just haven't been good enough. And there's teams that have been down the league over the last few years have just exceeded our expectations, have just done so well and been taking points off of some of those, so that particular top 6.
Yeah, it's pretty wide open, isn't it? Other games to just scoop through quickly. Leicester losing 2-0 to Fulham. Fulham back to winning ways, but Leicester looking really, really poor at the minute. No, it's really not. West Ham 0, Crystal Palace 2. Obviously extending off there, but I think Crystal Palace more than deserved the win. Mateta scoring a brace, so they look to be climbing the league too. A couple of results I just want to not really talk about much is Man City beating Ipswich 6-0. Let's scoot past that. And Brighton won against some team or another 3-1. Was it Man United? Yeah. Let's not talk about that either, because we could go on and on about Manchester United, couldn't we? But that about wraps up our podcast this week, guys. I just want to reach out again to everyone listening and to you guys watching. Thank you so much for your support. It's been a real great start to this year for growth for us. We're on Blue Sky and the interactions on there have been great. So please do find us on there. Just search for the Football Diary podcast. You'll see all 3 of us on there too. And obviously we're growing on audio channels and here on YouTube too. So please hit like, subscribe, and really appreciate your continued support. Until next time, guys, thanks a lot. See you soon.